It's okay. I think this topic is one of those. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. I think if you're in testing, though, chances are you're going to do it at some point in some capacity. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about how to get work done, which also seems like one of those really silly topics, like what? You assign it and you're done, right? But wow, it's just really not that simple. So getting work done to me is really a confusing thing, because I think the longer that I'm in testing, the more some things are becoming intuitive, and it's making it harder for me to describe in small steps to other people things that need to be done, and things that seem really obvious to me are not always obvious to other people, and it's really difficult to break things down into small pieces. I want to talk about a word called codify. Anyone familiar with it? Yeah? Okay. Wow, I'm impressed. So there was an article, I brought it with me, I don't know why. Somehow I feel like I had to have it with me or something. It's like this physical thing. There was an article in Harvard Business Review, I think it was in 2004, and it talked about if you're going to send work offshore, having it to be in small, tangible, explicit steps. And basically that's how you codify work, where you break it down into really small steps. Except the longer I've been in testing, the more telling somebody to do exploratory testing on something seems like already pretty descriptive to me. And I realize, I'm really bad then at breaking the work down into small pieces and having to describe it. In fact, so much so that earlier this year, I was in New York City freezing in a Starbucks with an account manager trying to break down business intelligence testing and getting into ETLs and stored procedures and how to go through and test that. And I will just tell you that for me, it felt painful trying to write it teeny tiny little steps. And I guess one of the frustrations that I had was, if we're in a thoughtful job, something that takes a lot of intelligence to do, but shouldn't be out of the range of people learning it, it's just hard. It's hard to break it down. And I'm not sure. I won't know either, because I've been doing this so long. I don't know if 20 years ago it would have made more sense to me to break it down, and if it's part of it's a problem is just having done it a long time, it's hard to break things down into tiny pieces. But that's where I really struggle, and I've realized something. I'm not good at codifying work. Okay, all right, great. That means I just need to find somebody else who is, and then I can review it, I can augment it, I can see where people get stuck on it, but I'm really not good at breaking things into teeny tiny pieces. So anyone up for a little video? I'm gonna play a video. It's gonna go by shockingly fast. Within seconds, you'll say, please show that again. So I will, I'm just gonna keep showing it, okay? I try, whenever I need a video or a clip, to share something that I really love. I happen to have this thing about coffee, so no big surprise, I have a little coffee clip. But the point of it is, take a look at this little teeny process and see, if you had to break it down into steps, how many steps do you think it would be? So you don't have to write them down. Let's not get over-engineer this, but just watch the video and count, and then with your partner, ask them, like, how many steps do you think that was? You may be surprised. Ready? Yeah, I should play music, huh? You want to see it again? Yeah. You want one of these now? Yes? Yeah, there are. That was a really good catch. How come I had to watch it a lot more times to figure that one out? And there's some assumptions in there too, right? I'm hiring you to codify from now on whenever I need to. You want this one more time, or do you think you can talk to your partner and come up with a number? All right, I'm going to show it one more time. Probably because I like coffee. Got to grow the beans, got to harvest the beans, got to roast the beans. I had to filter the water. We don't talk about the water. Is that 2% milk? Is that soy milk? What's going on? All right, let's see who has the highest number of steps. No, you don't get paid by the step, but you sound like a tester I've worked with. Oh my gosh. Or the number of bugs you find, and then you fill the bug system with like the dumbest small things you can come up with. I said that, didn't I? All right, what do we have for numbers? 12? 13 plus quiet assumptions.
I saw about 15, but then there's all the preparatory things.
Yeah.
So that could be like.
That means there's a lot of assumptions. Like in order for that to be present to do that step with, what had to occur first, and we break that backwards, and depending on how far you're going to go back to the bean farm,
Right.
Or the petrol, the oil well to get the straw.
So this seems a little silly, yeah? But think about this. Like, what about what data I've assumed? What about the test equipment I've assumed? What about all these other things I've assumed? I'm not even going to touch that per se. I'm just saying that it's interesting that anything you know really, really well, it's so easy to say, go make me an iced latte. But to somebody else, it's just not that simple. So this whole topic of codifying, I don't think is written about very much. And I was shocked to find the testers that I've worked with really need this. And I think a lot of it goes to the fact that a lot of them are really young. And maybe I'm not supposed to say that because that's so politically incorrect of me. But when I went on site, it kind of matched a lot of what I had seen as experience with one of the vendors, and it was the same thing. I almost had the feeling that they had grabbed a van, gone to a local university, picked up a bunch of smart young kids, brought them back to the office and said, you're a tester now.
Sometimes they do.
Pardon me? Yeah, they do. They're white vans, but... So if you think about it from this perspective, can you imagine if you did that? You would then bring those people back who would probably, have all the makings for what you need, but you would train them, you would teach them, and you would treat them in a way to get them up to where you needed them to be. I've seen a situation where I've had people just like that hired, and they're so malleable and so intelligent and so ready to do a great job, but then have a vendor who doesn't really know much about testing. They're in the business of business. They're not training them. You're not training them. You're assuming they train them. And I keep running into a lot of really, frankly, really young testers, hungry to learn, and nobody really is teaching them on either end. And they're left. And it's kind of sad when you have to break things down into like codifiable steps because you're now not trusting that they're intelligent enough to figure some things out. We go back to you kind of get what you ask for. We don't want people to just follow scripts mechanically in some cases, but then again, when they don't know what to do and nobody's teaching them what to do, and you break things down into little teeny steps, you've paid for human automation. And you know what? They're not loving it either. And that's what I'm feeling. That's the experience I'm feeling. So the word codify has become a big word to me because it always reminds me of all of that. And it's just bigger than me even. And so I remember one time I thought I was doing something wonderful for a group of people, truly, sincerely, thought I was like giving a gift to a group of testers when I said, get rid of the scripts. Just put the scripts aside. I want you to do exploratory testing. And I gave them a session on exploratory testing. And I'm like putting my heart and soul into it, giving them everything I know, like up my sleeves of what to do. They didn't know what to do with it. And I'm not making fun of intelligence or culture or anything else, but they had never been given permission. They had never run. So, bringing them to a field and saying run left them at the gate feeling really confused about what to do. And then I realized that I had messed with something else, which is the all-powerful metrics, which is something else I want to talk about, is status reporting and how people status report. Account managers know how to count, right? How many scripts did you run? How many bugs did you report? These are the numbers that they've been trained. If you don't know anything about testing, even from a distance, people know the word test scripts. The scripts, the scripts, the scripts. And they measure them on that. And so trying to kind of elevate the bar for them, which I thought was like freeing them from some of like the routine work, actually got them all really confused. And I was creating chaos. And so then I had to realize no pendulum swinging, bring them over slowly, right? And even that it took effort. It was like, please do your scripts. We're gonna go back to scripts. Go through and do your scripts, and at the end of the week, the end of an hour, some body of time, try exploratory testing. Just try it. Do you have any ideas left in your head of what you think you could try? Has anyone in the team ever come into the office with, well, what if I? And the answer to that one originally was no. Nobody's ever come into the office kind of talking like that or thinking like that. So then it was about trying to encourage that behavior. But I also realized this weird seesaw with the account manager of, I can work with the team and I can try to get them somewhere, but if they're still reporting in a different way, then I'm just creating a dynamic between them. And that gets tricky. And I'm seeing people nod their head, but I don't want to force anyone to have to speak. The all scary speaking thing. Can who help me with this video? Can you come back up and help? Can you toss it back up on my slide so I don't have to think about it and you can do that? Really gotten good at delegating. I'm totally in management now. And I used to just be a tester. It was so simple back in the day. I want to talk about metrics. I want to tell a little story about a green ball. I had a client, really great company, and they had offshoring resources. They actually have more than one vendor. You good? All right, just good control. And they were really used to having all the metrics reported in a certain way, and regression testing, always the hot topic, not ever the thrilling one, but always a hot topic, like, are we done with regression testing yet? They used to have this pie chart, and when regression testing would start, the ball was red. And then as they finished regression testing, the ball would go green. When it was all green, it was like good to go, unless something horrible had happened. Yeah, perfect. You're hired. So I asked the question, okay, cool, I get it. You make the ball go green, basically. So, but what are the scripts? Like, what's the regression testing? What are you doing? What's behind the green ball? And nobody knew. Nobody on the team knew. And so then I went to the offshore testers and said, tell me what's behind this metric. It's so important, right? Can you clarify that? Oh, so you haven't, let me see if I've got this right. You don't do exploratory testing because that's a foreign concept, no pun intended. You run test scripts, but the test scripts are not fully written out, but this ball goes green when you're done running whatever it is you haven't actually documented. So you're not doing things sort of the old school way or, a more creative way, and yet everyone's relying on your metrics. So who makes this ball go green, and when are you really done, and what are you really doing? And people didn't know. So I was very quickly not, frankly, very well liked on site, going to multiple teams, kind of forcing the offshore testers to like, I need to see the scripts. I want to see them. I'm going in the repository, I want to see them. And I don't even like test scripts. I'm like very anti-script person. But if I'm sitting around waiting for this ball to go green, then I want to know it's on the basis of something. And I really kind of turned the whole thing upside down. So then everyone was stuck. I mean, it created some chaos, which was fine. And I said, okay, I've got an idea. Your scripts are not all the way written. Got it. I'm not trying to make you feel bad about that anymore. It is what it is. Let's do whole team regression testing together and shake out what the script should be. So if you have a set of 50 scripts, let's put a Post-it up on the wall for each one of the scripts. We get a team in a room, everyone grabs some Post-its, and we can't finish until we go through regression testing together. And full transparency, we now know what regression testing is. It took months. working with multiple teams to do it, but I actually got a really nice email from somebody on site saying, we still do that. We still do whole team regression testing now. It's no longer something the testers do separately. It's something the whole team does, and we do know what regression testing is. And they do still use the green ball, but at least they have an idea what's behind it. So that's my story about the green ball. Anyone can relate to that? Comment?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We have a tool that's commonly used for continuous integration. It's called Jenkins.
Yeah.
Jenkins runs unit tests. Jenkins reports with a little green ball or a little red ball. You get the little green ball if there are no failures. So in fact, you'll pass if you run no tests. We discovered that in a bad way.
That's awesome.
Not
Well, from a distance, it's really funny.
yeah.
Okay. Are you hiring at your company? I'm just kidding. It was a joke.
I know.
It's okay.
I'm thinking of several answers that would probably get me fired, so I won't say anything.
Okay. Well, I'm not really a big fan of metrics and reporting, but it's a big deal for offshore companies. And drilling in and figuring it out is a big one. And I know one of the things I wanted to talk about today is about test automation. So I've been working with people who do test automation, and then I talked to the people who are actually doing this quote-unquote scripting, and I asked them like, so when's the last time your client saw your automation? And inevitably the answer is, it's been months. So there's another huge spend of money that I keep seeing happening, which is somebody is offsite, they're automating, they're pouring heart and soul into it, or maybe, or at least hopefully they are, but nobody on site is taking the time to review it. And then I think part of the problem with that is when they are doing it, they will set up a demo, they queue up the scripts, they run, it's boring, nobody's talking to it, nobody really knows what's going on. Most of the people sitting around the table are hitting the mute button, drinking coffee, watching it. People stumble into the meeting late and go, what's going on? Oh, okay. They watch it for a little bit. They leave the room sometimes, and nobody really knows. So I stopped one of those demos once, yet another way not to be very popular, and said, can you just talk to me? I don't really want to watch the automation run. It's just not that interesting. Just talk to me. Just tell me what you automated in regression testing. Tell me what risks you saw. Tell me what things you went after. Tell me what's going on here. And there was just silence. And it went on. It was a 15-minute painful conversation because they couldn't. And it was another situation where I realized I had fairly junior testers who couldn't talk to that kind of thing. They'd been given scripts to automate, but they didn't know why. They didn't inherently know why. They just did what they were asked to do, but they didn't have a sense of what was supposed to get done. And automation is just, it's even more difficult than other testing to keep up with what's going on. And it's a shame to think of how much money gets spent, and it's just quietly over there in the corner. I had one offshore vendor used to do a monthly newsletter. Every time the newsletter would come out, I was always eager to read it. But it was filled with stuff that you couldn't really do anything with. It was like, we've automated 50 more scripts. Awesome. Yet a bigger regression suite that I can't do anything with, that I don't know what it contains. And I can only imagine how many people are doing that and how much they're spending on this tool. I just cannot advise you enough to ask questions about it. And if you think you're bored asking or you don't have time, just know the money's still going, somebody's still automating, it's still happening. Enough of a rant on that?
Do you see a difference between the people who are more junior that work for the company that you work for versus outsource? So the difference in offshore and outsource?
That is a really great question. Yeah, I do. I think the biggest thing with being on site, and it's whether you're a contractor or full-time, whatever, you're there. I have, over the years, worked with lots of teams, and I always feel like, going back to Anna's talk earlier today, honestly, it doesn't really matter if you have a manager, the team will self-correct. So if I'm working with a team and I'm not pulling my weight and doing what I need to do, the team will straighten me out. And I don't need anyone else to do that. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide on site, and if you're not getting much done, you just can't do that. Whereas offshore, I'm not implying, or I don't mean to be implying, that resources are trying to hide. In fact, some of them really, really don't want to. Some of them are really hungry to learn. Sometimes they're just lost. I've found whole people get lost on the cracks in between, with an account manager who's maybe not the nicest of persons, and a team that's just going, really busy and just doesn't take the time out to deal with them, and they're kind of left, you know? I worked with this one tester. Frankly, I could never wrap my head around the way he viewed testing. I think it must basically equate to the most boring clerical job he thought existed on the planet, because he thought it had to be a requirement, had to be a script, had to be executed, had to be expected results. There was no other thinking going on. And the more time I spent with him, the more I found out that was how he was schooled by the vendor he worked for, and he was not expected to ask questions. And I just think that most teams that I work with, when you get down at the team level, will not put up with that kind of ridiculousness. The team generally will need everybody pulling their weight. And it's just too easy to get lost. Does that help? Does it match what you've experienced?
Yes. I've experienced, I have both teams that are offshore that work for my company and a lot of junior people, and I have teams that are offshore and outsourced. And I think in both cases, one of the struggles is to get them to say something negative, that everything's not rosy.
Yeah.
I get a lot of
Right.
tell me what they think I want to hear.
Yeah.
And any metrics, and I think but I think I struggled with the same things around. Do they really need to, is there some language barrier? They just don't understand the language of what I'm asking them to do. Or, is that it? Or they just need better training. I think that's harder to gauge when you're just in front of them.
Yeah, it is. I think it's all of those things, and it's a mix. And I think for the most part, I don't think they know how to articulate it. I meet testers here. I mean, at conferences everywhere, whether it's domestically or internationally, I meet testers all the time who have no problem coming up to me saying, I really want to learn. I'm not sure what I should be learning next. Do you have thoughts on books or things I can read or do? And I'll talk to them a little bit, like, what kind of testing are you doing? And I try to find gaps and identify things for them. But a lot of the less experienced testers I meet, they don't know how to ask for that. And they don't even know how to find the gaps in their education. And at the risk of sounding mean or like I'm patronizing, they're so inexperienced. The answer is they need something in every category. Whereas most of the time, people that I work with one-on-one, it's usually, oh, well, you need a little bit more of this, you need a little bit more of that. In this case, it's almost everything. And I think my experience being on site, one of the things that became clear to me is when I'm here in America and I'm feeling serious heat at a company, maybe the stuff going on, layoffs, pressure, that whole push to production feel, the normal way life is here. They don't feel that. It's very hard to translate business pressure over a long distance. Like, if you work remote, you might feel it a little bit, or somebody else in your team might give you a heads up, so-and-so's cranky today, or like you kind of know. But when you're from a distance, it's really hard to pick up on some of that. I think one of the biggest eye-openers I ever did one time was being on site, working with a small group of testers that, they were trying. I was spending a lot of days with them. I was gone for weeks. And they were really doing their level best. But I had been at the client site, and it just, I started to feel the gap. That was when I started to think, I can now be useful. Because now I can see the problems, right? You're a consultant, you want to see the problems and you want to help with them. And so I asked them about the business. Do you understand the difficult times your client's going through? Like, they're seriously under pressure from Wall Street. What's Wall Street was one of them. I thought I would fall over. And then I thought, stop being so North American, just listen. The kid doesn't know what Wall Street is. It's a legitimate question. You can tell from looking at the person's face. And then I said, well, the earnings report just came out. what's an earnings report. And that was when I said, okay, let's all get together. We'll go in this little conference room and I'm going to play the earnings report. It's not about Karen, you know, ranting about testing, right? I'm shutting up and playing this listen. And they listen to the earnings report, and you could hear the president of this company sweating it out for Wall Street. The numbers are down, the stock is down, we're going to be making cuts, we're going to have to do reductions. You could hear it. I mean, as a North American, you could, like, the sweat, you could feel it. And I'm watching them like a hawk. And like, this is news to them. They've never experienced it. They don't know the business world, and they don't know how things tick over here. And in the last whatever years now of the immense pressure that's come from the economic, they don't have that. And so it occurred to me, like when I go in the office and things have suddenly shifted a little bit, and I'm trying to translate that a long distance to get them to shift and feel that heat, how are you going to convey all that? It's a good open-ended.
That became the open door for them to kind of break through what they experienced previously. Now, clearly, there's some work to do if they want to get better, more open, okay. It's a start.
I think Michael wants to add something to that.
The kids that I had in India and China, the environment was so competitive. All they had ever done in their life was go to school. So they had a theoretical knowledge of things that was profound. They had an intellect that scared me. But they had absolutely no ability. And the schooling systems in both those countries and some others were set up very much on the model of, I'm the authority figure. I am telling you the way the world is, and you are to learn it and regurgitate it back as closely as what I say without question, because that's how you learn. That was the model in the schooling systems that they were scored on it,
right,
graded on it, and it was highly competitive. So your ability to learn to do that was how you succeeded. I come in, I'm changing the whole paradigm. I'm saying,
right.
I'm deliberately going to throw a monkey wrench in this exercise, and I expect you to question me and challenge me about it.
Yeah, I've come to realize that too. Some years ago, I wrote an article with a couple of examples. Like one of them was I ended up with this, honestly, rock star performance tester, but she was in a position where she had to go back and seriously question the director of development, who happened to be a man. And so this whole structure, like, so finally she came to me short of the meeting with tears saying like, I can't do it. I was like, all right, you give me the information, I'll go fight for you, because fighting is uncomfortable for you. But how funny is it that testing is really a questioning job? It's all about asking like, what if? And then we turn around and we offshore it to a country whose whole culture is to not question. And nobody seems to have seen that. Right, or deeply, or like argumentatively. Right, yeah. Yeah.
I would question that.
Bring it on.
So I went to several meetings with QAI Institute people, and I met some people at my age, people who've been in testing for 20-something years. And I'm teaching that questioning, asking the right question, testing is about questioning, and people cannot take it. They don't. They've been learning that testing is validated requirements. It's not about asking.
I know.
So it's not just the culture. It's also in America same.
Yeah, it's how you're schooled up on it. I mean, I think you've got a better shot of it happening there. Thank you. But it's in the culture. And every time I see testing turned into a clerical job like that, where it's more about paperwork, then I know I'm going to have a lot of challenges, and some of the very same challenges over and over. It's true. And I can think of one outsourced vendor who, they show up a lot when I speak, and I know that they school their people that way. I'm not saying all of them. I think it's very hard to generalize these things, because they're a very large organization, and I have seen some very good testers from them, and I've also seen some not so very good. And so there doesn't seem to be the myth of like the vendor quality. It's not, it's an individual effort. I've seen, it's spiky, right? Where some of them are really talented. I do want to raise this topic, and I know I'm getting a little tight for time. This sort of goes back to the account manager. So if the account manager doesn't know testing, fine. The testers are learning, which is usually what we find. Here's the real question. Who is reviewing their work? And the answer to that is you, or no one, or not much. And so keep that in mind. And so when you see this sort of ripple, which I started, remember the phone call I said, Bill sounded different every day? Oh, that explains the defect reporting. No wonder why there's such a variance in that too, because it's maybe a different person even reporting the defects. But I think that this is a great one. And this was somewhere I was able to help my client a lot, where each team needs somebody who's reviewing their stuff and schooling them up a little bit as they go. And if nobody's doing that, guess what? Not so much going to get better, unless you as the client are helping them to get better. And it's just more obvious to me now. Now that I realize there's often not a layer in between, it clarifies a lot of things for me. I'm going to pass on that. This is how I feel. I just think this says it all. I feel like I don't fully know what all's going on over there, and then even when I show up on site, I'm not sure if they've dressed it up for the day or what. So with my client who hired me, I was happy that if I was around a lot, I could get to know what normal was. I also learned something else, which you probably kind of know this too. If you ever bring offshore testers on site, most of the time, I won't say always, but most of the time, they are obligated to stay in touch with their team back home somehow. Nightly phone call, nightly Skype, whatever it is. And I know that that's always advertised as a great way of communication, but I also see other things to it. I feel bad for people. They're working really long hours, and then they're expected to stay up. I knew one tester, she was expected to stay up late every night and answer the call and go into details. The other reality is it's what I call lines of loyalty. Don't you think the account manager wants to know, well, are they happy there? Because sometimes they were joining the calls too. And so what a weird place they're put in. They're trying to keep one whole group of people happy during the day and another whole group of people up to date. And I think about it being typically somebody who's probably not been working as much, and wow, you're really putting a lot of load on them. That's a lot of stuff to be juggling, a lot of relationships. So a couple of quick questions. Test automation we covered on. Mobile devices, I want to make a comment. I've done a fair amount of mobile testing in the past, not so much lately. And here's the thing that just mystifies me. Different phones, different languages, different carriers, different networks, and we're offshoring it. All good, especially if you're working on a global product because you're picking up like the experience somewhere else. But do you even know what devices they're testing with? And those shiny iPads that most of us have, I bet everyone in this room probably owns one, unless you're like very anti-Apple and then you probably have a cool Galaxy tablet or something. They're not so plentiful in an offshore site. And so if they're telling you they're doing iPad testing, yeah, I'm just a little skeptical. I just want to know what they have because, as the last item here, equipment. When's the last time they got upgraded and what are they working on? And this tussle between the vendor thinking that you're going to pay money for that and who's paying for the equipment upgrades. And it's really easy to leave the testers with like the dog machines at the end of it. But you pay a price. Multiple time zones I haven't talked about too much. I did write an article about this in the past, so I'm not going to kind of relive that. You can find it. I wrote resources at the end of this so you can look them up. Employee conditions, I care about this. I care about this a lot. I don't like thinking that anything I do is leaving somebody in a really bad situation. And so this goes back to, I now think very carefully about, like I said, if I give an account manager feedback, what that might do to the employee, if I give the employee some information, where that puts them. Just trying to kind of look out for them where I can. Trust takes a lot of time. Here's a frustrating thing about trust. It takes a lot of time to build and it takes a heartbeat to break it. There's no way around it. I think the best thing that I can do as a person is I try to be consistently myself no matter where I am. I talk the same to people one-on-one as when I'm presenting, when I'm doing a webinar, whether I'm on site, whether I'm remote, same behavior on Twitter. So it's a matter of consistency, and I think it builds a certain amount of trust, but it's really easy to break. I want to leave you with a short story that I think is funny. It was an eye-opener. I had two guys I was working with in the Middle East and working with them enough to get to know them. It was getting kind of comfortable. And we were in a Skype session one day, and they were there. I could see them. And I'm writing notes down. So this is very intermittent, looking up and down. And we get talking about something, and I said, I don't know. It's like a fork in the road, because I could see going either way. And I wanted to hash it out with them. I wanted to think it out loud. And I look up, and there's just these blank stares. I said, what's up? And why are you not asking? Because I had already said, if I ever say something you don't know what I'm saying, you should tell me. I don't know what you're saying. And this blank look. I said, what? And one of the guys said, why is there a fork in the middle of the road? And that was when I realized I don't speak English. I speak American. And it's peppered in my speech. And I don't know when it's going to show up. And it's just in there. And I can get away with these expressions. There's always business lingo that goes on in America too. I'll circle back round with you, right? Like we use these weird expressions. They become normal. And then we use them on calls with people, what we're saying. And so, of course, my only comment was like, why didn't you ask? I've made it as comfortable as I can for you to say, we don't know what you're saying. So that's a big one. I know I wrote an article a few years ago about use simple language. I thought that was really simple. I'm still learning, obviously. Put a fork in it. Put a fork in it and we'll call it done. We talked a little bit on this, but there is one thing I want to ask before we leave, and that is to do the survey. Is there a survey? Is there a form? Feedback form?
There is a survey.
It's on the mobile app?
Phone app, but I'm having trouble finding it, so if one of you all has figured it out. I also have an announcer to finish.
Oh.
And you scroll to the bottom of the, I think it'll say, presenter here.
Okay. I am a big fan of feedback. This conference is a fan of it too. Don't be shy. Say what you think. It helps everybody. Oh my gosh, if we can't find where the link is, we're all like, I didn't think it was that hard. It seemed pretty straightforward. And then I want to ask if there's any last questions.
One of the areas I have the most problems is that the testers don't want to be testers, especially if they're manual workflow testers. That they really want to be developers, or they want to do the automations or the tools.
Right.
And that seems to be a
True.
problem I have over and over, that they're, kind of rotating door of testers coming through, and then, a couple months in, it's like, oh, they prefer to go do something else, or more development related.
I feel the same way. I have the same problem. A second problem that I have, and this really hurt, and it was just this year, where I finally figured it out because I was told we don't want to read. Stop highlighting all these articles from James Bach and Michael Bolton. We're not going to read. It's hard for us. It's in a different language, and we have to kind of mentally translate it. Do you have any videos? Really short clips? So I've started to highlight more YouTube videos because I've got a generation of testers who don't like to read, which is a mystery to me. But there isn't much you can do about people who don't really want to do this. For them, it's an entry-level thing, and for you, it's a source of forever frustration. The only thing I try to do with people in that is I try to say to them, if you don't want to be a tester forever, I have a hard time understanding it, but okay, at least be honest with me about it. And in the time that you do it, why don't you learn a few things that will make it a little bit more interesting? And then I just accept it, because it's going to happen anyways. I want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon. If you see me around, you want to talk about offshoring, feel free. Thank you.